Marcus Wellington adjusted his worn baseball cap and pulled his old jacket tighter around his shoulders. The successful businessman looked nothing like the CEO of Wellington Electronics, a chain of 12 electronics stores across the city. Today he was just another customer walking into his downtown location on 5th Street. He had been planning this visit for weeks. Anonymous customer reviews on social media had been troubling him. Several people complained about poor treatment at this particular store, with some mentioning discrimination. Marcus knew that customer service was the heart of any retail business, and these complaints were keeping him awake at night. The store looked busy as he approached the entrance. Through the large windows he could see customers browsing the latest smartphones and laptops. The familiar blue and silver Wellington Electronics sign gleamed above the door, but Marcus felt nervous butterflies in his stomach. He had built this business from nothing 20 years ago, starting with just one small shop. Now he was about to see if his values were being followed in his own stores. An electronic chime announced his entry as he pushed through the glass doors. The store was exactly as he remembered from his last official visit 6 months ago. Rows of gleaming electronics filled the space, from gaming consoles to smart home devices. The familiar smell of new electronics and carpet filled his nostrils. Marcus grabbed a shopping basket and began wandering the aisles, keeping his eyes and ears open. He picked up a tablet, pretending to examine its features while actually observing the staff. Near the phone section, he noticed a young black woman helping an elderly customer with great patience and expertise. She was explaining the differences between various smartphone models in simple terms the customer could understand. The cashier wore a name tag that read Sarah and had a warm smile that seemed genuine. Marcus watched as she demonstrated how to use the phone's camera and patiently answered the same question twice when the elderly man didn't understand the first time. Her professionalism impressed him, and he made a mental note to remember her excellent customer service. As he continued browsing, Marcus noticed the store manager walking around the floor. The manager was a tall, thin man in his 40s with slicked-back hair and an expensive suit. His name tag identified him as Robert Chen, store manager. Marcus had hired Robert 8 months ago based on his impressive resume and interview performance. On paper, Robert seemed perfect for the job. However, Marcus noticed something troubling about Robert's behavior. While he was friendly and attentive to well-dressed customers, his demeanor changed noticeably when dealing with others. When a young Hispanic mother asked for help finding a tablet for her daughter, Robert gave short, dismissive answers and quickly directed her to look around yourself. Marcus felt his jaw tighten as he witnessed this interaction. He had always insisted that every customer deserved the same level of respect and service, regardless of how they looked or how much money they might spend. This was not the Wellington Electronics way. He decided to test the situation further. Marcus approached Robert directly, still disguised in his casual clothes and baseball cap. "Excuse me, I'm looking for a good laptop for my son's college work. What would you recommend?" Robert barely looked up from his clipboard. His eyes quickly scanned Marcus's worn clothing and old sneakers. "We have some basic models over there," he said, pointing vaguely toward the back corner. "The prices are clearly marked. You can figure it out yourself." Marcus felt heat rising in his chest, but he kept his expression neutral. "I was hoping for some expert advice. This is a big purchase for my family." Robert sighed heavily as if Marcus was bothering him. "Look, if you're worried about price, maybe you should try the discount electronics store down the street. We focus on quality products here." His tone was condescending and dismissive. The disguised CEO thanked Robert politely and walked away, his mind racing. In just a few minutes he had seen enough to confirm his worst fears. The manager he had trusted to represent his company values was treating customers differently based on their appearance. Marcus spent another hour in the store, observing more interactions. He watched Robert snap at Sarah when she took too long helping a customer, telling her to speed things up even though she was being thorough and helpful. He saw Robert refuse to help a young black man who asked about the store's return policy, telling him the information was posted on the wall somewhere, but what Marcus saw next would change everything. As closing time approached and the store became less crowded, he witnessed something that made his blood boil. It was time to see just how far this discrimination went, and whether his worst suspicions about Robert's management style were true. The real test was about to begin, and Marcus knew that what happened in the next few minutes would determine not just Robert's future, but the future direction of his entire company. As the evening crowd thinned out, Marcus positioned himself near the customer service counter where he could observe without being obvious. He pretended to compare two different phone cases while keeping his attention focused on the staff interactions. Sarah was handling the register with the same professional courtesy she had shown all day. A middle-aged woman was returning a defective tablet, and Sarah processed the return smoothly, even though the customer didn't have her receipt. She found the purchase in the computer system and cheerfully offered to exchange the item or provide store credit. "You're so helpful, dear," the customer said gratefully. "It's rare to find such good service these days." Sarah smiled genuinely. "Thank you so much. We want every customer to be happy with their purchase. Is there anything else I can help you with today?" Marcus felt proud watching Sarah work. She represented everything he wanted his stores to be known for. However, his good feelings were about to be shattered by what happened next. Robert appeared from the back office carrying a stack of papers. He walked directly to Sarah's register with an annoyed expression on his face. Several customers were still in line waiting to check out, but Robert didn't seem to care about the timing of his interruption. "Sarah, we need to talk," Robert said loudly enough for everyone to hear. His voice carried an edge that made Marcus's stomach clench. "Can it wait until after I finish with these customers?" Sarah asked politely, gesturing to the line of people waiting. "No, it cannot wait," Robert snapped. "You've been taking too long with every single customer today. This isn't a counseling session. Ring them up and move on." Sarah's cheeks flushed with embarrassment as the customers in line began to look uncomfortable. Marcus could see her trying to maintain her professional composure despite being publicly humiliated. "I understand your concern, Mr. Chen, but I believe in providing thorough customer service," Sarah replied quietly, trying to keep her voice down. Robert's face darkened.
"Don't lecture me about customer service."
"I've been in retail longer than you've been alive. Your job is to scan items and take money, not to waste time chatting about every product like you're their personal shopping consultant." Marcus watched in growing anger as Robert continued his public berating. The customers in line were clearly uncomfortable, some of them checking their phones or looking away awkwardly. One elderly man shook his head in disapproval at Robert's behavior. "Furthermore," Robert continued, his voice getting louder, "I've noticed you've been giving unauthorized discounts to certain customers. The employee discount policy is clear, and you don't have the authority to make pricing decisions. I only applied the senior citizen discount that's posted right there on the wall," Sarah said, pointing to a clearly visible sign. "It's store policy. Don't point at me," Robert said sharply. "And don't argue with me in front of customers. We'll discuss your attitude problem in my office tomorrow morning. For now, just do your job without the unnecessary conversation." Marcus felt his hands ball into fists. Sarah had done nothing wrong. In fact, she had been exemplary in every interaction he had observed. Robert was clearly targeting her unfairly, and the public nature of his criticism was completely inappropriate. But Robert wasn't finished. As Sarah tried to return to helping customers, he added one final comment that pushed Marcus past his breaking point. "Maybe you should remember that cashier positions are easy to fill," Robert said coldly. "There are plenty of people who would appreciate having a job and wouldn't question management decisions." The threat was clear, and it hung in the air like poison. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she continued scanning items for the next customer, but she maintained her professional demeanor. Marcus could see tears forming in her eyes, though she was fighting hard to hold them back. Several customers in line exchanged uncomfortable glances. The elderly man who had shaken his head earlier stepped out of line and left the store without making his purchase. Another customer followed him, clearly disgusted by what they had witnessed. Marcus realized he was watching more than just poor management. This was systematic bullying and harassment, possibly motivated by discrimination. Sarah was being targeted not for poor performance but despite excellent performance. Robert's behavior was driving away customers and creating a hostile work environment. As Robert finally walked away, looking satisfied with himself, Marcus made a decision. He couldn't remain silent any longer, but he also knew that revealing his identity right now might not be the most effective approach. He needed to gather more evidence and understand the full scope of the problem. Marcus approached Sarah's register with a small item to purchase. When it was his turn, he looked directly into her eyes and spoke softly. "I'm sorry you had to deal with that," he said sincerely. "You've been nothing but professional and helpful today." Sarah's eyes widened slightly at the unexpected kindness. "Thank you, sir. I really appreciate you saying that." As she processed his purchase, Marcus noticed her hands were still shaking slightly. The impact of Robert's public humiliation was clearly affecting her ability to do her job, which made his behavior even more inexcusable. Marcus lingered near the store entrance after completing his small purchase, pretending to check his phone while actually observing the final hour before closing time. He wanted to see if Robert's behavior was a one-time incident or part of a pattern. As the last few customers made their purchases, Marcus noticed how differently the store felt compared to when he had first arrived. The energy had shifted from welcoming to tense. Sarah continued working professionally, but her usual warmth seemed forced now. She glanced nervously toward Robert's office several times, clearly worried about their promised morning meeting. Around 8:30, Marcus watched as the evening staff began their closing procedures. Sarah was methodically counting her register drawer when Robert emerged from his office again. This time he carried a clipboard and wore an expression that Marcus had learned to recognize as trouble. "Before you finish that," Robert called out to Sarah, "I need to document today's performance issues for your employee file." Sarah looked up from her counting, confusion evident on her face. "Performance issues? My register balanced perfectly today and I helped every customer who needed assistance." Robert consulted his clipboard theatrically. "Let me see. You took 17 minutes with the elderly gentleman buying a phone. Store policy recommends 10 minutes maximum per customer interaction. He needed help understanding the features," Sarah explained calmly. "He's never owned a smartphone before, and he wanted to make sure it would work for staying in touch with his grandchildren. I thought that was exactly the kind of service we should provide." "What you thought is irrelevant," Robert replied coldly. "I make the decisions about customer service standards, not you. Additionally, you spent 12 minutes helping that woman with the tablet return when it should have taken 5 minutes maximum." Marcus felt his anger building again. Robert was criticizing Sarah for providing excellent customer service, the very thing that built customer loyalty and repeat business. Every interaction Marcus had witnessed had been appropriate and professional. "Mr. Chen, I respectfully disagree," Sarah said, maintaining her composure. "Both customers left happy and said they would recommend our store to others." "Isn't that what we want?" Robert's face darkened at being questioned. "Are you telling me how to run my store? Because if you think you can do better, there are plenty of other electronics stores in the city that might appreciate your approach." The threat was becoming more explicit, and Marcus could see Sarah's confidence wavering. She was clearly a good employee who took pride in her work, but Robert's constant criticism was undermining her self-assurance. "I'm not trying to challenge you," Sarah said quietly. "I just want to do my job well." "Then follow my instructions without arguing," Robert snapped. "I shouldn't have to explain basic retail concepts to someone who's been here 6 months. Maybe this position is too challenging for you." Marcus had heard enough. He was about to step forward when another employee approached the register area. The young man looked to be in his early 20s with neat hair and a pressed shirt. His name tag read Kevin. "Excuse me, Mr. Chen," Kevin interrupted politely. "I finished restocking the accessory section. Is there anything else you need me to do before closing?" Marcus noticed immediately how Robert's demeanor changed. His harsh expression softened into a friendly smile, and his voice became warm and encouraging. "Excellent work today, Kevin," Robert said enthusiastically. "I noticed how efficiently you handled the smartphone display reorganization. That's exactly the kind of initiative I like to see." Kevin beamed at the praise. "Thank you, sir. I really enjoy working here. Keep up the outstanding work, and I'll make sure to mention your efforts in next week's district manager report." Robert continued. "Employees like you are what make this store successful." The contrast was staggering. Within seconds, Robert had transformed from a harsh critic to an encouraging mentor, simply based on which employee he was addressing. Marcus realized he was witnessing clear discriminatory behavior in action. As Kevin walked away, obviously pleased with the recognition, Robert immediately turned back to Sarah with his previous cold expression restored. "As I was saying," Robert continued, "your performance needs significant improvement. I'll be watching you very closely over the next few weeks." Sarah nodded silently, but Marcus could see the defeat in her shoulders. The mixed messages and unfair treatment were clearly taking their toll. She was being criticized for the same level of customer service that would probably earn Kevin praise. Marcus decided he needed to hear more of their interaction. He moved closer, pretending to examine a display of phone accessories near the counter. "One more thing," Robert added, lowering his voice slightly. "I've been getting complaints from some customers about your attitude." "What kind of complaints?" Sarah asked, genuine surprise in her voice. "They say you're too pushy, too talkative. Some people just want to buy something and leave without a lengthy conversation about every feature." Marcus nearly spoke up immediately, because this was completely contrary to what he had observed. Every customer interaction he had witnessed showed Sarah being helpful but not pushy, informative but not overwhelming. If anything, customers seemed to appreciate her thorough approach. "Could you tell me which customers complained?" Sarah asked. "I'd like to understand what I did wrong so I can improve." Robert waved his hand dismissively. "I don't discuss specific customer feedback with employees. Just trust that I know what's best for this store." Marcus felt sick to his stomach. Robert was either making up these complaints entirely or drastically misrepresenting customer feedback. Either way, he was using false information to intimidate and demoralize a good employee. The closing procedures continued, but Marcus had seen enough to understand the full scope of the problem. This wasn't just poor management or bad communication skills. This was systematic harassment and discrimination, and it was happening in his store under his company name. As the staff prepared to leave for the night, Marcus knew tomorrow would bring the confrontation he had been avoiding. But first, he needed to make one more observation to fully understand how deep this problem went. Marcus decided to return the next morning to observe the promised meeting between Robert and Sarah. He arrived early and positioned himself in the coffee shop across the street, where he could watch the store through the large windows. His plan was to enter the store during the meeting and witness Robert's behavior firsthand. At 9 a.m. sharp, Marcus saw Sarah arrive for work. Even from across the street, he could see the tension in her posture. She walked slowly toward the employee entrance like someone dreading what awaited them. Marcus felt a knot form in his stomach as he imagined what she might be going through. 15 minutes later, Marcus entered the store. The morning shift was just getting started, and only a few early customers browsed the aisles. He could see Robert's office in the back corner, with its glass walls providing a clear view of the interior. Sarah sat in a chair across from Robert's desk, and even from a distance, Marcus could tell the conversation was not going well. Marcus picked up a tablet from a nearby display and began examining it, positioning himself where he could observe the office while appearing to shop. What he saw made his blood pressure spike. Robert was leaning forward aggressively, pointing his finger at papers on his desk. His face was red with anger and his mouth was moving rapidly. Sarah sat rigidly in her chair, her hands folded in her lap, occasionally nodding or shaking her head in response to his statements. After 20 minutes, the office door opened and both of them emerged. Sarah's eyes were red and she kept her head down as she walked quickly toward the break room. Robert followed her partway, still talking, his voice raised enough that Marcus could catch some words. Final warning. Improvement plan. 30 days to show progress. Marcus felt his heart sink. Robert was putting Sarah on a formal disciplinary plan, which meant her job was now in serious jeopardy. For what? For providing excellent customer service and following store policies correctly. Sarah disappeared into the break room and Robert strutted back toward his office with a satisfied expression. Marcus noticed several other employees had witnessed the scene, and they were exchanging worried glances. The toxic atmosphere Robert was creating was affecting everyone. Marcus decided it was time to take action. He couldn't stand by and watch a good employee be destroyed by a discriminatory manager, but he also wanted to give Robert one final chance to reveal his true character. He approached Robert, still maintaining his disguise as a casual customer. "Excuse me," Marcus said politely. "I was here yesterday and received excellent help from the young lady at the register. Sarah, I think her name was. I'd like to leave some positive feedback about her service." Robert's expression immediately became guarded. "What kind of feedback?" "She was incredibly knowledgeable and patient," Marcus continued. "She helped me understand the differences between several products and made sure I got exactly what I needed. It was the best customer service experience I've had in years." Robert forced a smile, but Marcus could see the irritation in his eyes. Well, that's nice to hear. I'll make sure to pass along your comments. Actually, I'd prefer to speak with a district manager or someone higher up, Marcus pressed. Employees like Sarah deserve recognition at the corporate level. The fake smile disappeared from Robert's face. That won't be necessary. I handle all customer feedback for this location. Sarah is still learning our procedures. What you saw yesterday might not represent our usual standards. Marcus felt his anger rising at Robert's attempt to diminish Sarah's excellent work. I disagree. Her service was outstanding by any standard. She's exactly the kind of employee who builds customer loyalty. Look, Robert said, his voice becoming harder. I appreciate your input, but I know my staff better than anyone. Sarah has some performance issues we're working through. Maybe you caught her on a good day. Marcus couldn't believe what he was hearing. Robert was actually trying to convince a satisfied customer that they hadn't received good service. This level of bias was more extreme than Marcus had imagined. What kind of performance issues? Marcus asked directly. Robert hesitated, realizing he might have said too much. I can't discuss personnel matters with customers. Is there anything else I can help you with today? Actually, yes, Marcus said. I'd like to make a purchase, and I specifically want Sarah to help me. She earned my business yesterday. Robert's face tightened. Sarah is busy with other tasks right now. Kevin can assist you with any purchase. Marcus looked around the store. Kevin was clearly visible stocking shelves, while Sarah was nowhere to be seen. It was obvious Robert was deliberately preventing Sarah from helping a customer who had specifically requested her assistance. I'll wait for Sarah, Marcus said firmly. That could be a very long wait, Robert replied coldly. As I said, Kevin is available now and very knowledgeable about our products. The confrontation was escalating, and Marcus could see other customers beginning to notice the tension. He realized Robert was so committed to his discriminatory behavior that he was willing to lose sales rather than allow Sarah to succeed with customers. At that moment, Sarah emerged from the break room. Her eyes were still slightly red, but she had composed herself and was walking toward the sales floor with determination. Marcus caught her attention and waved her over. Sarah, this customer specifically requested your assistance, Marcus said loudly enough for Robert and other staff members to hear. Sarah looked confused, but pleased. Of course, I'd be happy to help. What can I do for you today? Robert's face turned an even deeper shade of red. He was trapped between his desire to undermine Sarah and his obligation to serve a paying customer who had made a specific request. Actually, Sarah, Robert interrupted before Marcus could respond. I need you to finish the inventory report first. Kevin can handle this customer. It was a direct order designed to embarrass Sarah in front of the customer and prevent her from making a sale. Marcus realized this was the perfect moment to reveal his true identity. Robert had just demonstrated his discriminatory behavior so clearly that there could be no doubt about his motives. The moment of truth had arrived, and Marcus knew that what happened next would determine not only Sarah's future, but also set the standard for how his entire company would treat employees going forward. Marcus took a deep breath and slowly removed his baseball cap, revealing his face fully for the first time. He stood up straighter and let his natural business posture emerge. The transformation was subtle but significant, as his true personality began to show through the disguise. Actually, Robert, Marcus said in a clear, authoritative voice, I think Sarah should definitely help this customer. Robert was still focused on asserting his authority and didn't immediately pick up on the change in Marcus's demeanor. Sir, I've already explained that Sarah has other duties right now. Kevin is perfectly capable of— I'm sure Kevin is excellent, Marcus interrupted, but I specifically want to work with Sarah. And as the owner of this company, I think my request should be honored. The words hung in the air like thunder. Robert's mouth fell open mid-sentence and his face went through a rapid series of color changes from red to white to pale green. Sarah gasped audibly, her hand flying to cover her mouth in shock. I'm sorry, what did you say? Robert stammered, his voice suddenly much quieter. Marcus reached into his wallet and pulled out his business card, holding it out to Robert. My name is Marcus Wellington. I own Wellington Electronics, including this store. Robert stared at the card as if it might explode. His hands shook as he took it, reading Marcus's name and title over and over. Around them, other employees had stopped what they were doing and were staring at the unfolding scene. Mr. Wellington, Robert began, his voice cracking slightly. I had no idea. We weren't expecting. You would have what, Robert? Marcus asked calmly. Treated customers differently? Spoken to Sarah differently? The whole point was to see how this store operates when you think no one is watching. Sarah was still standing frozen, looking back and forth between Marcus and Robert, as if trying to process what was happening. Other customers in the store had begun to gather at a respectful distance, sensing they were witnessing something significant. Sir, I can explain everything, Robert said desperately, sweat beginning to form on his forehead. There have been some challenges with staff performance, and I've been working to address them according to company policies. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. Let's talk about that. Yesterday I watched you dismiss customers based on their appearance, including me. I saw you publicly humiliate Sarah despite her excellent customer service. This morning I witnessed you prevent her from helping a customer who specifically requested her assistance. Each statement hit Robert like a physical blow. His confident demeanor from minutes before had completely disappeared, replaced by panic and desperation. Mr. Wellington, I think there might be some misunderstandings. Robert tried again. My management style might seem harsh, but I'm focused on efficiency and results. Efficiency? Marcus repeated. I watched you drive away customers yesterday with your dismissive attitude. I saw you criticize Sarah for providing exactly the kind of thorough service that builds customer loyalty. Where's the efficiency in that? Sarah finally found her voice, though she spoke quietly. Mr. Wellington, I want you to know that I love working here. I believe in what this company stands for, and I try my best every day to represent those values. Marcus turned to her with a warm smile. Sarah, in the time I spent observing, you demonstrated every quality I want to see in my employees. You were patient, knowledgeable, respectful, and genuinely helpful to every customer. You are exactly what Wellington Electronics should be. Tears formed in Sarah's eyes, but these were tears of relief and gratitude rather than the frustrated tears Marcus had seen the day before. Robert, realizing his career was hanging by a thread, made one last desperate attempt to save himself. Mr. Wellington, I want to apologize for any misunderstandings. Perhaps I've been under too much stress trying to meet district performance targets. I'm sure we can work through these issues and improve communication. Marcus studied Robert's face carefully. Tell me about these customer complaints you mentioned to Sarah yesterday. The ones about her being too pushy and talkative. Robert's face went white again. He opened his mouth several times, but no words came out. I'll save you the trouble of answering, Marcus continued. There were no complaints, were there? You made them up to justify your harassment. The accusation hung in the air as Robert struggled to respond. His silence was answer enough for everyone present. Let me tell you what I really saw, Marcus said, his voice growing stronger. I saw you treat customers differently based on their appearance and race. I saw you praise Kevin for the same type of work you criticize Sarah for doing. I saw you create a hostile work environment through intimidation and false accusations. Other employees were now openly listening to the conversation. Marcus could see recognition in their eyes, as if they were finally hearing. Someone put words to things they had witnessed, but felt powerless to address. This behavior is completely contrary to everything Wellington Electronics stands for, Marcus continued. We built this company on the principle that every customer deserves respect and every employee deserves to be treated with dignity. Robert made one final attempt to defend himself. Mr. Wellington, I've been trying to maintain high standards and discipline. Sometimes that requires tough management decisions. Tough management decisions? Marcus's voice rose slightly. Lying about customer complaints is not management. Public humiliation is not discipline. Preventing a good employee from serving customers is not maintaining standards. What you've been doing is discrimination and harassment, plain and simple. The truth was now fully exposed, and there was no way for Robert to deny or minimize what had been revealed. The moment that would determine everyone's future had finally arrived. Marcus looked around the store at the gathered employees and customers, then back at Robert with the expression of firm resolve. The time for confrontation was over. Now came the time for action and justice. Robert Chen, your employment with Wellington Electronics is terminated effective immediately, Marcus announced clearly. Please gather your personal belongings from your office and leave the premises. Robert's face crumpled as the reality of his situation hit him fully. Mr. Wellington, please, I need this job. I have a mortgage, car payments. Can't we work something out? Maybe additional training or a performance improvement plan? The same kind of improvement plan you put Sarah on this morning for doing excellent work? Marcus replied. The kind of second chance you never offered to the customers you dismissed or the employee you harassed? I'm afraid not. Robert's shoulders sagged in defeat. He looked around at the other employees, perhaps hoping for support, but found only cold stares and unsympathetic faces. His discriminatory behavior had affected everyone in the store, creating an atmosphere of fear and tension that was now being lifted. You have 15 minutes to collect your things, Marcus continued. Security will escort you out after that time. As Robert walked dejectedly toward his office, Marcus turned his attention to Sarah, whose eyes were wide with disbelief at the rapid turn of events. Sarah, Marcus said gently, I owe you an apology. No employee should have to endure what you've been going through. Your professionalism in the face of that harassment shows incredible strength and character. Sarah wiped her eyes and stood a little straighter. Thank you, Mr. Wellington. I was starting to think maybe I really wasn't cut out for this job. That's exactly what Robert wanted you to think, Marcus replied. It's a classic pattern of workplace bullying, designed to make good employees doubt themselves. But you never stopped providing excellent customer service even when you were being torn down unfairly. Marcus addressed the other employees who had gathered around. I want everyone to understand something clearly. Wellington Electronics has zero tolerance for discrimination, harassment, or any form of unfair treatment. Every employee deserves respect, and every customer deserves quality service regardless of how they look or what they're wearing. Kevin, who had received praise from Robert the day before, stepped forward nervously. Mr. Wellington, I had no idea what was happening to Sarah. I should have said something. Kevin, you're not responsible for Robert's behavior, Marcus assured him. But going forward, I want every employee to feel empowered to report concerns about unfair treatment. We're implementing an anonymous reporting system so problems like this can be addressed before they escalate. Marcus then made an announcement that surprised everyone. Sarah, I'm promoting you to interim store manager while we search for Robert's permanent replacement. You've demonstrated the leadership qualities and customer service skills that represent our company values. Sarah's mouth fell open in shock. Mr. Wellington, I'm honored, but I've only been here 6 months. Are you sure I'm ready for that responsibility? I've seen how you handle pressure, how you treat customers, and how you maintain your integrity even when facing unfair criticism, Marcus replied. Those are the qualities that matter most in leadership. The technical aspects of management can be learned, but character like yours can't be taught. The other employees broke into spontaneous applause, their relief and approval evident. Sarah had always been popular with her coworkers, and they were genuinely happy to see her succeed after the treatment she had endured. Robert emerged from his office carrying a small box of personal items, his head hung low. The man who had strutted around the store with arrogance just hours before now looked small and defeated. As he walked toward the exit, he paused near Marcus. I want you to know this wasn't personal, Robert said quietly. I was just trying to run an efficient operation. Marcus looked at him steadily. Robert, discrimination is always personal to the people who experience it. The customers you dismissed, the employee you harassed, they all felt the personal impact of your choices. I hope you learn from this experience and treat people better in your next position. Robert nodded silently and left the store, ending his brief and destructive tenure as manager. Over the following weeks, Marcus made several changes to ensure the problems he had witnessed would never happen again. He implemented mandatory diversity and inclusion training for all management personnel. He established clear customer service standards that emphasized respect and patience for all customers. Most importantly, he created multiple channels for employees to report concerns about unfair treatment without fear of retaliation. Sarah excelled in her new role as store manager. Under her leadership, customer satisfaction scores improved dramatically, and employee morale soared. The store that had been tense and unwelcoming became a model location for the entire Wellington Electronics chain. 3 months later, Marcus received a letter from the elderly gentleman who had bought a smartphone with Sarah's help on that first day of observation. The customer wrote about how much he appreciated Sarah's patient assistance and how the positive experience had led him to recommend the store to all his friends. Marcus smiled as he read the letter, remembering how Robert had criticized Sarah for taking too much time with that very customer. True customer service, Marcus realized, couldn't be measured in minutes or transactions per hour. It was measured in relationships built, problems solved, and customers who felt valued and respected. The experience had reminded Marcus why he had started Wellington Electronics in the first place. It wasn't just about selling products. It was about creating a company where employees were treated with dignity and customers felt welcome regardless of who they were. Under Sarah's management, the 5th Street location had become exactly what Marcus had always envisioned his stores could be.